So the Texas rig loses a lot of its appeal once the bass get on shad. So it is no longer that numbers and big fish bait that you can use it in the summer. Some of those June and July days where the fish are tucked down in the bottom, it seems like that's all you need. It's not like that anymore in the fall. If you go out looking for bass, you're really going to struggle. Now, there are still going to be days where the fish are tucked down to the bottom and whatever bait that you found them on, spinnerbait, fluke, chatterbait, crankbait, they will not bite. They won't touch anything. A Texas rig will still work. And not just one with a bullet weight, but also one rigged Texas style like a Cinco. One of my favorite baits to catch them on this time of year when I'm around a lot of fish. So I'm big on just straight-tailed worms on a Texas rig this time of year, but it's very specific. You can't go around looking for bass like you do earlier in the year. Welcome back to the channel. Thank y'all for hanging with me on this Sunday. So a Texas rigged worm, not nearly the player that it is in the summer or in the springtime. You don't hear a whole lot about it, but it still does work. I'm going to give you a couple specific instances where it's really going to play for you and you can't take it out of your boat just yet because you have a lot of fish that are relating to structure and they're not there yet in their fall time pattern where they lose their mind and just get on bait. So they're still perfect for a Texas rig worm. And this is just the same rig that you're going to use in the spring or in the summer, 1/4 ounce weight, 3/16 ounce weight, maybe even weightless. But I changed my worm up from what I'm using in the summer. And I'm going to be fishing it a little bit differently because the bass are different. They're not doing what they were doing a couple months ago when that worm seemed like that was all you needed. So basically what I'm going to do when I'm catching them on a worm is I've already found some fish. Fish may be grouped up for whatever reason. They're in an area. They're hard to catch. And a worm is the only thing that you can catch them on. But until I find fish, I'm not seeking out bass with a Texas rig this time of year. Now, if you get down into Florida, you can always catch fish. You can always find fish with a speed worm or some type of Texas rigged worm. You get up into South Alabama, they're still going to bite a worm, but this is more what I'm talking about. A little bit further north, even up here on Guntersville, there's just this perfect situation where a worm's the only thing that will catch them. So when you have a group of fish, they're really concentrated on something. Could be a drain, could be a point, but there's something there within the bottom that is holding the fish. It's not a bait related thing, but they're coming to one spot. Now there may be bait on it, but it's sucking them in just one spot. A worm is going to be a really hard bait to beat. Now, typically you can catch those bass on a Texas rig flipping to them because the cover is probably providing some shade and you need something a little bit heavier to get in there. So grass lakes in the fall time, bass are always going to be on some type of flip and bite. Same things with lakes that don't have grass but have a ton of cover. That bait is going shallow. That bait is going to the shade, and that is going to hold the fish in there. So any lake that has a bunch of cover, you're always going to see flipping play in the fall months. Not only is that where the easier bass to catch are, but you just have a concentration of them there that you really don't have anywhere else on the lake. So the flipping thing's always going to play, but when you need to drag a worm around in those spots is when your grass may be a little bit lower to the bottom, so you can't really flip it. It's not topped out or up vertical in the water column. It's just kind of on the bottom, like eelgrass sometimes does that. And if you have quality fish in there, you can still catch quality bass on a worm. So it's all about there being fish already there. And I've also seen it where maybe you were catching them flipping something heavier weight, 1/2 ounce, 3/4, and they're on the edge. But when they push back in there, you can't really flip around. You need to go fish for them like you were in the spring and the summer, where you're throwing it and you're fishing that whole grass bed. So it's one of those deals. If you can get the fish out, like hydrilla, milfoil, eelgrass, something like that, you don't have to worry about breaking them off. You can throw way back in there and fish it the entirety. So that is Texas rig fishing this time of year. Now, when it comes to looking for bass, the way they're positioned, they're kind of up in the water, they're suspended. So once you get out of like 2 or 3 feet of water, you're not going to be positive that the fish are on the bottom. A lot of them have come off the bottom. So you get out in 5 to 6 foot, which is great for worm dragging in the spring and the summer, rather. The Fluke, a much better search tool. So I'm about to start practice for a tournament I have up here next week. I start on Thursday. I got white, straight white. Doesn't matter how your water clarity is. First thing in the morning, I always start with straight white on low light conditions. I'm probably going to be out there right at sunrise. So that first hour to an hour and a half, it's going to be straight white. Then I'll get into more natural colors as the day progresses, depending on what type of conditions we have. But much better a search tool if you want something finesse that's going to get you a lot of bites. I think you'll get better bites on that Fluke than you will get with a Texas rig, but you can't take it out because that spot where you're catching them flipping, or maybe that spot where you're catching them on top water, they're tucked down to the bottom. They're not biting things that are up in the water column. They're not biting that flipping stick anymore because they've pushed further back in that area. You've got to go to that old reliable worm, even in these months where you don't hardly hear anyone talk about it. Try that. Good luck to you, and I'll see you on the water.